The comments, opinions, and views shared during this program are of those individual Freemasons and do not reflect the official position of a Grand Lodge, Concordant Body, Appendant Body, Masonic Authority, or CraftsmanOnline.com. Welcome to the Craftsman Online Podcast, the only 5-star rated Masonic podcast endorsed by the Grand Lodge of New York.
Hey, welcome back. It's Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce, and you've joined us for an episode as we look into the upcoming July reading room with Craftsmen Online. Joining me for this episode is our friend Brother Jason Shorts, who returns to talk a little bit more about the Craftsmen Online reading room. Welcome back, my brother.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited because you coming on here, we get set for another Craftsmen Online reading room event that's happening on Monday, July 30th. Don't worry, the link to get everything, the Zoom meeting invite, the reading materials, you can even submit your questions for our panel. That link is going to be in the notes for this episode, or you can just go right to our website at craftsmanonline.com. But Brother Jason, you've brought a ton of, honestly, much needed energy and ideas to our working group behind the scenes. Tell us about some of the exciting format changes that you've made for this event that's coming up in July.
Oh, I appreciate that. The program's continuing to evolve, but we're really trying to find a way to engage the audience a little bit more and bring a little bit of life into it. So for coming up July 30th, we're going to start introducing a special guest panelist on every episode. And we've got author Brother Angel Millar lined up to join in the panel discussion of his book, The 3 Stages of Initiatic Spirituality, which should be really cool. We're also opening up to receive questions that you'd like the panel to talk about during the program ahead of time. And anybody interested in participating can send their questions to craftsmanonline.nys@gmail.com.
Nice. Yes. And of course, the link to do all of that, if that went by too fast, also going to be in the notes for this episode. I just realized we're still kind of early on into our YouTube live streaming of the recordings of these podcast episodes. So now our listener, now viewer, can see what I see on their screen and go, yes, he does kind of look like a young Abe Lincoln. I see why that's his nickname.
You know, that's so funny. Every time I walk into Grand Lodge now, the security guys are always like, hey, Abe.
So I wanted to talk to you about summer book clubs and reading groups. And I know that you joined the Craftsman Online working group and you're a contributing blog author. You've been a frequent guest here on the podcast. But for me, I felt that like book clubs are kind of going the way of the dinosaur. Like, honestly, Jason, when was the last time you ever heard of a book club?
I have to say, I have heard of another book club that is kind of popular because George Washington Lodge does their book club.
Oh, good. I thought you were going to say Oprah.
But the George Washington Lodge does their book club, which had actually inspired Ruben to bring this Craftsman Online reading group to a wider community. But yeah, outside of that, very few and far between, man. Very few and far between.
Yeah, especially Masonically. And as you pointed out, yes, back in my day, it was probably like 4 years ago during the birth of the whole Craftsman Online. I remember, we were all in the lockdown or in different shutdown phases thanks to COVID. We couldn't go to our lodge rooms. We really couldn't get close to our brothers. Guys were looking out for things. Washington Lodge 285. They did have a fellow craft club / reading group that they were doing. We kind of asked them to help us, and we put together some reading events. Thanks to those brothers. I'll never forget Worship Brother Don Perpy for being so helpful to get that launched. And we finally had enough talent that we pulled together to do our own thing. When you describe the reading room that Craftsman Online does to brothers in your lodge or just fellow Freemasons that you meet across New York State and other jurisdictions, how do you put that into words, what we do?
Every master of a lodge is charged to bring some education into a meeting. And for a lot of lodges, they're so consumed with the administrative and clerical business that um, that's really necessary, but leaves something to be desired for brethren seeking further light. Um, and Craftsman Online is trying to provide that light by hosting this esoteric book club that explores the greater mysteries of life in a really informed and well presented setting.
There was one summer, was not during COVID. I think it was the summer before COVID that I was at my home lodge in New York, Mount Zion number 311. The brothers and I, we were so engaged. There were like four of us that were like the quote unquote thinkers of the lodge. Not to say the others didn't think, but we were like the book readers and really getting into the grist of ritual and all the secret and deeper meanings that are buried in there. And we were just kind of sad because, in New York State, traditionally our lodges don't meet during the summertime. So there's like 3 months that goes by that sometimes you don't see these guys. And kind of like outside of getting together to go bike riding on some trails from Troy to Schenectady, or just getting together for a beer or two, or having like a little cookout or something, like we didn't really get together Masonically. So we had this idea between the four of us that I would invite them over to my house. I would make dinner. We would each take turns, during that 3 month period, every couple of weeks, of selecting a book title from Amazon. And the rule was that the book couldn't cost more than, I think we set the dollar limit to like $20. I've never had so much fun in my life before, because this is the stuff that I think when you go to join a Masonic lodge as a candidate or just a gentleman who has an interest in Freemasonry, you think that this is where they all come in and they have these like very high level or deep level, depending on how you want to look at it, kind of esoteric discussions, as you touched on. And kind of unfortunately too frequently in our meetings, they become business meetings. They get kind of bogged down with paying bills and making proclamations about events that are coming up. And that's what I like about the reading room, is that you do get this chance that maybe if you don't have brothers in your lodge or in your area that are into reading the books and sharing their knowledge, you do have that now in a safe space thanks to Zoom meetings.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of brothers who come through the door who are looking for that, um, they have it in their mind that that's what this is all going to be about. Like traditionally, the idea of being in a Freemasonic lodge is that there's lectures on the liberal arts and sciences and free thought. And when you're sitting there and it's just a couple of older brothers who might be airing their dirty laundry, and you just are trying to not fall asleep while there's a ongoing discussion about something that's important but not very appealing, it really kills that drive. You're really fortunate to have had like a group of friends, of brothers who wanted to get together and have those conversations. I think that there are a lot of lodges now that there are some younger members of the craft who have come in, and not necessarily just in age but just in time spent in the craft, who are really thirsty for that esoteric and educational content, but don't necessarily have any other brothers to enjoy that with. And Craftsmen Online, I mean, we're really trying with the reading room to provide that outlet so that we can grow the wider community and have a much wider conversation and start appealing to that thirst, start quenching that thirst for knowledge.
One of the things that's special that New York Freemasons get is the Livingston Library reading program. We had Right Worshipful Michael Araka on the podcast a few episodes back, where he talked about this during our summer road trip, and how basically, and we'll make sure the link is in the notes for this episode as well, but if you are planning on looking at kind of a dry, boring summer, maybe you'll be recovering for shoulder surgery for the next 4 to 6 weeks. I don't know, just guessing. I can literally feel your pain. And you're looking for something that you can do, that you can always enrich your mind with borrowing select texts from that would normally cost a small fortune or almost be impossible to find in local libraries or bookstores, through the Grand Lodge, through the Livingston Library. What I have always found special about our reading room is that we do offer whatever the sources that we'll be reading up for free. And we've covered some really heavy hitters. how did we settle on this month's or this season's selected author, Brother Angel Millar?
It's great to explore Manly P. Hall, who is kind of contemporary relatively, but a lot of the texts that are out there that are really well known, like Albert Mackey, Pike, those guys are 200 years ago now. You go back further, like George Oliver, um, Preston, like these. This is before even modern English, and um, finding finding a brother who not only represents our craft in a really positive light, but also represents modern sensibilities is A, important, and B, there are tons of modern Masonic writers out there who are just as important and prolific and distinguished as these brothers who have come before. Um, Brother Millar, Angel Millar is one great example. Pierce Vaughn, Archer de Hoyos, Mark Stavish, Manuel Friedman. I mean, the list goes on. Having an opportunity to get brothers who are interested in reading in the craft, not only online with some of the tried and true classics, but onto some really good current stuff is really critical, I think. And I really enjoy a lot of these authors as well.
The Craftsman Online podcast is now sponsored by BricksMasons.com, our favorite destination for all of our Masonic shopping needs. Whether it's apparel for yourself or a cool gift idea for another brother, make BricksMasons.com your online marketplace where tradition meets innovation. Every Masonic Lodge deserves a distinctive and unique banner, and Bricks Masons is here to help you create yours. Your beautiful machine-embroidered banner, maybe it's for a Scottish Rite Valley, for example, measures 36 inches in width and 60 inches in length, and it can be tailored from various materials such as blazer, cotton, polyester, velvet, or even silk. And utilizing cutting-edge embroidery technology, Bricks Masons ensures a refined appearance, top-notch quality, and lasting durability. Plus, you can personalize it with your preferred design, size, Masonic symbol, and lodge details. Turn your lodge vision with a new lodge banner into reality at Bricks Masons. Visit BricksMasons.com and explore their extensive catalog. Elevate your Masonic experience with style and substance. Plus, Craftsman Online podcast listeners use promo code Craftsmen, that's CRAFTSMEN, at checkout to enjoy free shipping with your first order.
I get the feeling of getting to be an older brother again. I do have a younger brother. He's almost 3 years younger than me. And when we were growing up, there was that gap between like I was already in high school when he was coming into high school, or I was on my way almost out of high school when he was finally a little bit more established. And the cool thing when you're the older brother is you get to kind of like set the trend on like what cool is. So I remember like being the one to turn him on to like Guns N' Roses and Def Leppard and Metallica and Alice in Chains and Nirvana, like Pearl Jam, like all the music that we got into. Smashing Pumpkins was all because I'm like, David, you got to take a listen to this. This is so cool. And he's like, oh yeah. And it's kind of neat to get to have that feeling again with brothers, because I feel that too often when Masons finish the third degree and they start asking the questions like, hey, where can I get more light on this? And an older brother will say, well, it's inside of a book. Oh, well, what book should I read? Well, you should read Pike or Wilmhurst or Manly Peel. And it's like, whoa, Mackie, that's way too much heavy lifting for the average person. Where do you like to point brothers to? Like, who are some of your go-to authors or books that maybe you've read that like really touched you?
My first go-to or recommendation currently is Mark Stavish's The Path of Freemasonry, The Craft as a Spiritual Practice, which is, just a really wonderful book. And it also works as a textbook, or like not a textbook, but a workbook that gives you ways to engage with what you're learning so that you're actually at home developing yourself further. I actually have my copy of it.
Oh, wow. And that was a very unprepared question. It just is that close to you. That's awesome.
Yeah, is I really highly recommend it. And with these books too, for brothers who have been in the craft for a long time, it's really cool because you get to approach them with this. You can approach it with the beginner's mind. In Buddhism, there's this concept of the beginner's mind to kind of refresh yourself to a clean slate and then walk into something as if for the first time. And what's really cool about Mark Stavish's work is he's not just aiming his work towards brothers of the craft who like Mackey and Pike, a lot of the older authors were doing. His work's also intended for the general public, so he wants to make it like a comprehensive guide to how you can instill the values of masonry and cultivate a relationship with deity through the craft.
Mm.
Angel Millar does that really well as well.
Our special guest author and panelist on the July 30th edition of the Craftsman Online Reading Room. But I wanted to stay focused on this area because I feel like we get asked this question a lot. I know I get this, and we've both had the pleasure of coming across a traveling man, a younger brother who is just got this you just can't satisfy the thirst that he has for knowledge. He's always asking, "Hey, brother RC, what book should I read?" And I'm like, I've run out. I've completely run out of suggestions. Let me pass you off to Brother Short because he might, paint this in another direction. When you do make that selection, or I should say, when you do make that recommendation for another brother to read a book, and they come back to you, what do you find to be the most rewarding part of that experience?
So I've only had it a few times in the craft where I'd actually recommend a book and a brother came back to me and said that they actually read the book. One of my favorite experiences was after recommending The Initiates of the Flame to one of the brothers of my lodge. He came back and he was just beaming with light. And he was like, everything that I was looking for or I thought we were gonna be presented with is here. And so that's really important to me. Not what he said, but being able to share the light, like seeing somebody light the fire within themselves, that spark of inspiration to dig a little bit deeper. Reading in itself is a really exciting thing if you let it be.
I just made a note. I got to jot down all of these book titles so that we can share them in the notes for this episode, because I love, this is my favorite part of it, is exactly what you had stated. My favorite part is when a brother comes back and says, "Hey, I actually read it." I almost want to fall out of my chair when they say that. But then I get to have that magical moment. And for those that are in the know, you kind of know, like after the first degree, after the second degree, heck, even after the third degree, you really only get to ask this question one time, which is, what's the one thing that's burning in your memory that you have a question about with what you just went through tonight that we can talk about right now? Because once you get into that, they're never going to be able to recall a lot of those first. They're just so fixated, and you want to kind of, it's like a dream almost. You want to catch that and like get it down and like help them and get through it. And that's what I love about the book, is that they'll come back to you and say, "Oh, this part was interesting," or "This part was interesting." But they also bring a unique perspective because they're reading it from different eyes and from a different angle than I'm at in life. And I get to learn something as somebody who's maybe read that book, a couple of times, or it's well worn with notes and the being highlighted. Anyone who's borrowed a book from me knows that that's what happens when I read. And I got to come back and study this more. I want to know what this means. So that's, to me, always the rewarding part.
Yeah, that's the reward that I get in participating with the reading room. Knowing for one that here are several other brothers who have read the text, who are actively interested in it in a similar way but different than how I'm interested in it, and they're each approaching it from a different point of view, and that perspective is really just so enlightening. There's been several times that a brother panelist has said something that has completely reshaped my approach. Illustrious brother Cliff Jacob, maybe like every program, manages to present something that I'm just like, what?
Yeah, yeah, and that's where the real learning comes from, because you're like, I know exactly what you're saying. Just for recommendation too, if you're getting ready for a summer break with your lodge, or you're just a Mason that, you know, is looking for something to read, maybe go back through some of the simple learning from the craft. This is the book that I recommend, the title that I recommend. I personally buy this for every new brother that once they become raised at the sublime degree of Master Mason. Actually, take that back. I actually start with them when they're an entered apprentice, once they're obligated. I buy them their own copy of Kirk McNulty's Working the Way of the Craftsman. I find that particular book to be very well broken out. You could even use it as a master for your lodge to do simple discussion nights with the way that it's set up. It has questions in the back. It's kind of set up like an old chapter book that you would get in school. It's like the cliff notes of some of the things we cover throughout the degrees and other parts of the learning that's introduced that, and a lot of times it goes over our head that night because just so much stuff was given to us. So again, Working the Way of the Craftsman, that would be my recommendation.
Hey, it's Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. This summer, you can join Freemasons around the country in celebrating the bicentennial anniversary of Brother Marquis de Lafayette's final goodwill tour of the United States. Visit us online at craftsmenonline.com to view our extensive Lafayette bicentennial calendar. Now, this is featuring some really cool parades, Masonic events like history talks with Masonic historian and author and friend of the Craftsmen Online podcast, Brother Chris Ruley, also the New York Grand Lodge Lafayette Gala, the Lafayette French degree that'll be taking place in the city, and so much more. Plus, at craftsmenonline.com, you can share your lodge's celebration or event and add it to our calendar. See what's happening this summer as we roll out the red carpet for the celebration of Lafayette's bicentennial, and add your event at craftsmenonline.com.
As far as our event, and we're talking reading room that will be opening on Monday, July 30th at 8 o'clock Eastern. Again, the Zoom meeting link, the reading selection from craftsmenonline.com, all going to be in the notes for this episode. Plus, you can even ask your question to Brother Jason on the panel, Brother Angel Millar, who will be on the panel, Right Worshipful Michael Araka, and Right Worshipful Cliff Jacobs. Our reading selection is, as Jason stated, the 3 stages of initiation: spirituality, craftsman, warrior, magician, the inner traditions. We are going to be reviewing the first chapter, Craftsmen. So that's the free selection that's up on our website. Well, before we get into the book, have you got a chance to meet Brother Millar in person, Jason?
I have. I wanted to attend their lecture with the Livingston Library. Unfortunately, my lodge meets on the same night. However, I was able to speak to him prior to the event. And we ended up actually meeting up outside of lodge for a wonderful lunch, and we're able to talk for a few hours. What a wonderful brother. So amazing.
This might come as a surprise, but I have never met Angel in person. He's one of those, like, I would say, like, pandemic brother friends that I made, where I've spent a lot of time talking to him on the screen, on the phone. We've exchanged emails, text messages. I have yet to meet him in person. It's one of the things that I'm always a little bit secretly jealous of, the brothers that do live in New York City. They get a chance to pop in and visit him at his home lodge or his mother lodge, or maybe he comes and visits yours. But I got to tell you, when I did get the chance, the first opportunity to interview him for this podcast, I have not been shook that much before an interview, and never since. I was very intimidated to talk to him because I knew how learned he was, how deep his knowledge went on things. And I've made the joke with him that I felt like I was still in the kiddie stairs and he was in the deep end of the pool.
He casts such a wide net when it comes to his knowledge of the craft and metaphysical. It is intimidating.
Getting the chance to review one of his books, and again, we're only going to be tackling the first chapter, the Craftsman chapter, what are your initial thoughts? I don't want to get too much of a preview of what your remarks might be for the reading room with the panel, but what are your thoughts on his writings, and kind of, if you're looking into your crystal ball, where do you see the conversation possibly going on Monday night, July 30th?
When you order a dish at a restaurant just off the menu and it comes out and it is just so much better than what you had expected it to be. The 3 stages of initiatic spirituality: craftsman, warrior, magician. It's so rich, Michael, with insights into the initiatic archetypes of man. And it provides so much substance for further contemplation that it's a delight to digest. I am having the pleasure of rereading it actually for the program, because the first time I read it, some point last year, actually was so good. I went on even to read his newest book, The Path of the Warrior Mystic, similar in some respects, but explores is its own journey into cultivating a metaphysical relationship with divine and embodying the archetype, the warrior as a spiritual presence for modern man. I think the conversation is going to go towards just the initiatic experience in general, how the craftsman archetype really embodies all 3 of the traits of man. We're going to spend a lot of time exploring that connection to the craft, and how the relationship to being able to be an artisan, as an apprentice, to being more learned, and when you're in your physical prime, the warrior personality that comes with how, when we are raised to the sublime degree of master mason. Or to wrap it up, I do think that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the initiatic experience. Angel brings a lot of really great resources out just in that first chapter and in the introduction. And then the direction he goes towards trying to inspire or inform his readers, and how they themselves should be aligning or tuning into that fire in order to cultivate a relationship with their higher self. Um, you can't not want to keep turning the pages.
Yeah, and one of the things I love about this event, like many of our events at Craftsman Online, is this is open to anyone who has an interest in Freemasonry, or just has an interest in any of these kind of esoteric discussions. You don't. So translation is, you do not have to be a Freemason to attend the reading room. So if you have a friend or family member that would love to be a part of this event, let them know that they are welcome to join us on Monday, July 30th. I know you are right when you say that one of Brother Millar's favorite topics to get into is the initiatic experience. That seems to be a constant theme in a lot of his books. He's done a lot of research and writings into that, with the different traditions that exist and societies and fraternities that are out there. The one question that I would like to ask him, but it deals more with the preparation of the candidates and not necessarily our candidates in Freemasonry, but what was the preparation of candidates that were going through the ancient and mystic journeys in generations before us? Were they prepared? And if being prepared is having more knowledge about what you're going to undertake better, or is kind of literally walking in blind, or in some cases blindfolded, better for the initiate?
I guess my question for Angel, he has this quote in there that's the purpose of tradition is not to adore the ashes, but to pass on the fire. How does he feel that modern Freemasonry goes about doing that, and does it accomplish its mission in getting each of us to cultivate our own relationship uh, with the fire at the core of our tradition, the light at the core of our tradition, or has tradition obscured the whole thing?
So it's adore the ashes and enjoy the fire?
The purpose of tradition is not
Ah.
to adore the ashes, but to pass on the fire. I want to say that a big part of having a Masonic lodge is to create Masons. We're providing an initiatory experience for our brethren who are coming in to awaken that divine primordial energy within each and every one of us. We're to each cultivate our own friendship, our own actual relationship with divinity, while also building our own spiritual temples and ourselves. In tradition and in some more conservative lodges, and again, why we even have our Craftsmen Online reading room, is it's so easy to lose sight of that real core purpose of what our craft may be supposed to be, or at least be providing.
It hits me to kind of what you're saying, which is not to adore the ashes. So don't look to see, hey, there was this once mighty great fire and we should love this or think that this is wonderful. But our job is really to not let that fire extinguish to become ashes. Our job is to keep finding a way to help it grow, which is by adding new fuel to it or bringing more people to its warmth.
That quote, "The purpose of tradition is not to adore the ashes, but to pass on the fire," is translated from older German sources, which he made several citations to. That's the whole idea here. It's modern men exploring ancient mysteries. When we go on these journeys, we do become traveling men. It's not just about going out and about around the world. It's how do we travel within ourselves to access that deeper wisdom, that understanding. Again, going back to Mark Stavish's book, what's really beautiful about it and why I recommend it so readily is it starts with the historical exploration of where the craft came from and what we know before getting into a lot of the metaphysical aspects. I think understanding where we came from and the tradition behind things is important, but that's just the threshold of a much larger journey and a much deeper exploration. But what's really exciting about Freemasonry is being exposed to the opportunity to explore the initial seed of the idea yourself and then finding that spark within you.
Well, I have to say what's been pretty exciting about this is we were kind of setting out to get a preview of what the reading room was going to be like on Monday, July 30th. And I think what we gave our listener is kind of a preview of what to expect when you are a part of the reading room, just kind of minus me. It's really Jason and the other thinkers that are there. But no, this was fantastic. So young Abe, brother Jason Short, thank you so much for taking some time out. And I look forward to seeing you in just a couple of weeks when we get back together for the next edition of the Craftsmen Online Reading Room.
Right Worshipful RC, it's my pleasure and privilege to be. Thank you.
You can find the links for our book recommendations, our reading room details, and how to follow the Craftsmen Online YouTube channel for our next live stream recording, all in the notes for this episode. This has been Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us on Spotify and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Until next Monday, let peace and harmony prevail.